Hello everyone, welcome to this online reference course on the topic of impact of water quality on agriculture. Actually, this topic will be divided into three parts. First, we're going to discuss about some basics about the water quality and what are the impacts of this water quality to the agriculture, and also how this agriculture can affect the water quality. And the second part is the methods. That means that what are the various methods available to quantify the water quality for the agricultural activities. And the third part is the application. So mainly I will show you some case studies that how the researchers are dealing with these water quality problems on the agriculture. Okay, so before I move on, I would like to introduce myself. I am Dr. Prasanna, Head of Applied Sciences Department from Curtin University, Malaysia. Okay, so let's start with part one regarding the basics. Okay, so the basics of water quality and its need. Okay, so I hope everyone aware that water is an important and essential natural resources for all forms of life in our earth, right? And a very good example is in our daily life, waters play a very important role. Okay, and this water is used for various purposes, but if we see the majority of the water can be used for the drinking and domestic and agriculture and industry. So these are the various areas that water can used in effective way. And when you're talking about the water, of course, in our earth system, there are different types of different sources of the water. So where the waters come from, because this is very important in order to identify the nature of the water, the quality of the water, and what are the process that waters just came across to the particular domain. So in terms of sources, of course, the rainwater is the primary source that lead to the various form of water in our earth. And the second one is a river and lake waters, we simply call as surface waters, that you can identify very easily in our landscapes. And finally, the groundwater. So the groundwater is a very typical one because this groundwater is formed below the ground surfaces. So the nature of the groundwater is completely different from the surface water because we consider the groundwater, it is a closed system. So in the closed system, the groundwater involves various process, so that lead to some kind of a quality changes. For example, if the groundwater react or contact with the surrounding rocks or sediments or any particular geological material, then automatically the original composition of the groundwater can change. Okay, so the similar way the river and lake waters, because the river and lake water is more dynamic and it can be transported into a different domains and different landscapes, and it has have a lot of sediments, and that also lead to some changes in the water quality. In terms of rainwater, of course, everyone believe that rainwater is completely pure water, but you need to realize that the rainwaters that travel in the atmosphere, if the atmosphere is polluted, for example, some pollution from the ground, it just goes into the atmosphere in terms of a gas or vapor. Then the rain, the, when the rain fall down to the ground surface, it will react all these particular pollutant that present in the atmosphere, that carry forward through the rainwater, then end up into either rivers or lakes or groundwaters. So if in terms of sources, it is very important that in order to quantify the quality, of the water, first we need to identify what is the source of the water. Okay, and yes, because of the need and because of the importance of the water for everybody in our earth system, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals already propose some goals towards this water. For example, SDG 6, if you see, there is a clean water and sanitation. So, and also the SDG 14 reflects the life below the water. So that means that all over the world they're already very concerned about these water resources, and and the various agencies, including the government and NGOs, are the very concerned about the clean water in order to sustain the community. Okay, so this is a very basic concept that everyone well aware of this one, hydrologic cycle. Okay, so why this hydrologic cycle is so important? Because in the previous slide, I discussed about the sources. As you can see in the picture, there are so many arrows that indicating how the water get moves from one place to another place, and what are the process that able to operate this water can move around from the atmosphere to land and land to the atmosphere. Okay, a simple example is the main process is the evaporation from the ocean. So when the water, ocean water get evaporated, of course it goes into the atmosphere, get condensation, then is followed by the precipitation, again it comes to the ground surface. And if you see that the precipitation is end up in the ground surface, either the water can go into the surface runoff in terms of rivers, or it go into the lakes, and some of the water can infiltrate into the ground surface, that that go into the groundwater domain. But you need to see some other minor process also giving some important for this hydrologic cycle, that is a transpiration from the plant. Okay, so you can also see some kind of other mechanism that controls the movement of the water. Okay, so the last two slides I given the importance of water, and how this water can originate, and how this water can circulate in the different areas by the different processes. But if you see the recent updates, and the recent research has been done on the water resources, of course there are some threats or some kind of worries about the water resources in terms of quality as well as the quantity. Okay, so the pollution load on the rivers and surface waters, including the groundwater, has increased over the recent years due to rapid urbanization and industrialization. Okay, so this is the main reason that most of the country facing the issue of this water pollution, because day by day the urbanization has grows and industrialization has grows, and in top of that, of course, the population get increased, and also there is a growing demand from the agricultural activity as well as the various industry, that giving the water resources under pressure. Because if you want to operate this all these things, definitely the water play important role to maintain this all the process. So ultimately, that's giving some kind of water crisis. If there is so many waters has been taken from the natural resources, then it will lead to some kind of a water decline. Okay, so at the end, definitely there is a need for the sustainable management of water resources. And maybe you may aware that nowadays there is a lot of sustainable management plans for the water resources, how to protect, how to keep the quality of the water, and how to increase the quantity of water. So this all subjective to the sustainable management and development of water resources. Okay, so move on to the topic that I propose for this course on the agriculture. Okay, so you can think about in the two aspects. Okay, one thing, how this agricultural activity impact the water resources. But you can think in the other way around, how this water quality can affect the agriculture. Okay, so there is a two end member process. Of course, we can start with this one, agriculture impact to the water resources. If you see this pie chart indicating the global water usage. So in that you can clearly observe that the 70% of the water is used for the agricultural activity. Why? Because agriculture is an important part of India's political and socio economy. This is not only particular to India. In some other countries, agriculture plays a very vital role for the socio and economic growth. So most of the agriculture processes are mainly depending on irrigation. Okay, so irrigation means there is an artificial supply of water for the crop, to the soil in order to improve the agricultural productivity. So the groundwater has served as a significant source for the irrigation in several countries where the rainfall drainage and the river system are not adequate. Okay, this is a very simple concept because I already mentioned the first slide, the source of water. Just imagine if the country doesn't have any surface water like rivers or lakes, if there is no any sufficient water, so ultimately they go into the groundwater. So that's why the groundwater is considered as a very significant water source for the agriculture. Because if you take the global scenarios, I think some significant number of countries that mainly depending upon the groundwater, including India. So the increased use of groundwater for irrigation could lead to over abstraction or exploitation of groundwater resources that decline the groundwater level as well as the water become scarce. Okay, so this is the negative impact of how this agricultural activity affects the water resources. Okay, so if we see some statistics that the worldwide main water quality problems are associated with agriculture, that's lead to the salinization, nutrients loads, and the pesticide pollution. So if they identify the water quality is affected by agriculture, these are the three main problems that faced by the water composition. So one is the salinization, the salinity of the water get increased, or maybe the nutrient loads maybe increase above the permissible limit or above the recommended limit. And the pesticide pollution, this is very common that during the agriculture activity based upon the crop type, various pesticide has been used. So what happened when the pesticide has been used in the agriculture, this pesticide slowly go into the soil, then it get infiltrate into the groundwater. That means that it ultimately affect the soil quality as well as the water quality. Okay, so apart from that, there is another big issue is eutrophication. Okay, so eutrophication is a result of high nutrients loads to the water, particularly in the surface water. Okay, so in terms of nutrient, there are two main nutrients that control the eutrophication. So one is your nitrogen and the phosphorus. Okay, so take an example: if the crops need more pesticides containing this nitrogen and phosphorus, if they apply this one into the crop, then it's ultimately giving the eutrophication to the nearby water bodies. And the other pollutant from the agriculture activity also includes that pesticides, as I mentioned in the first point, and also oxygen demanding substances, and of course there should be some concern about the sediment quality. Okay, so now you just think about the other side of the screen. So how the water quality impact to the agriculture. Okay, so yes, because definitely the water quality is an important aspect for the agricultural activity. So if something's wrong with the quality of the water that used for the agriculture, that ultimately affect the agricultural growth in terms of crop yield or the sediment quality, this may be affected. Okay, so basically the physical and chemical properties of groundwater play a significant role in classifying and assessing the water quality for irrigation purpose. So the irrigation water quality refers to the kind and amount of salts present in the water and the effects on crop growth and the development. So as I mentioned, that salinization is one of the key factors that affect the crop yield or the crop growth, because this is one of the most widespread groundwater quality problem and having the greatest environmental and economic impact. So maybe you wonder, the salinization is not only from the agriculture, the salinity also comes from, for example, seawater intrusions or any particular uh, inputs from the anthropogenic activities. But what try to stress here, this salinization can also come through the agriculture activity, because this salinization is an important factor for the irrigation water quality. Okay, so maybe in the second part of this course I will test this particular point in very detail. Okay, so if you want to deal with the water quality, of course there is a one subject we called as hydrochemistry. Okay, because hydrochemistry is basically is used to determine the status of groundwater quality, not only the groundwater quality, surface water quality, pollution status, and also the geochemical processes. Okay, because this is a very important subject that is not only for agriculture. Of course, if you want to deal with the water quality and the what are the process controls the water quality, and then you can think about this hydrochemistry. Hydro is a water, chemistry means the water composition present in the water. So usually researchers are deal with this hydrochemistry into two broad way. So if you see the left hand side, process in the sense of you can take a hydrochemical process, how this quality has been affecting by various processes. So in order to deal with this process, these are the key factors. Okay, because if you take the water composition, these are the three major groups of elements present in the water. The first one is a major ions, for example calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, so on. And heavy metals, you can also call as a trace metals like a lead, copper, iron, zinc, uh, etc. Even though it is a trace amount present in the water, but it plays a significant role in terms of quality. And finally, the nutrients, very important one, because you can directly link this nutrient to the agriculture. Because for the agriculture, as I mentioned, they're using various pesticides and fertilizers and that containing these nutrients. If it's directly discharged into the open source, then it will go into the water system or soil. Okay, so that's why I put this arrow mark here. So if you want to assess the irrigation water quality or maybe the agriculture usage, these are the major controlling parameters present in the water. Okay, and you can see the other side is the quality. Once you know what are the process controls these ions or the metals present in the water, then they can decide how the quality of the water. Okay, so the quality of the water is depends upon the utility. Okay, so for what utility you are assessing the quality. For example, at the moment I am stressing too much on agriculture because my focus is agriculture. So there are certain procedures and guidelines of how the water can be used for the agriculture. And in other way around, some studies are very specific to the certain ions, for example fluoride, arsenic, or uranium. So that research is very detailed and very in depth, particularly on these elements, because these elements are very um, critical, and it give a lot of impacts to the environment. That's why you could also see some of the studies is very focusing on these particular ions. Okay, water composition. That's what I said. If you want to assess a water quality, first you need to identify what are the composition present in the water. Okay, so the ionic composition of water governs the parameter considered for irrigation purpose, as they affect the soil properties and the crop yield. Okay, this is the key point I just want to stress. Why I am always talking about the water quality to the agriculture, as already mentioned that, so water is one of the key factor for the agriculture. So if the water quality is not up to the standard, then the agriculture activity will affects. Okay, so in terms of water quality, the composition, so ionic composition, for example, I already mentioned the previous slides, the major ions or heavy metals or nutrients, that will decide what is the quality of the irrigation that you can attain from the water. Okay, because it ultimately affect the soil property, because you know that if for the agriculture, the soil is also a important component for the growth of the plants. Okay, so this table will give you some example of how the water composition looks like. Okay, so these are the parameter. You can see the first column. You can see some parameter like a pH. I hope everyone knows that pH of the water. EC is electrical conductivity. TDS is a total dissolved solid. So this one we consider as a physical parameters. This you can measure in the field itself using some ionic electrodes. And these are some major ions. You can see here calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, chloride, and so on. And these are some of the ranges of the concentration. And these two columns, I just want to emphasize that whenever the researchers are dealing with the quality, they want to compare with some standards, okay, whether the concentration is within the limit or above the limit, because that's will giving some alarm for you that what is the status of the water quality. Okay, so BI is related to the Indian standard, and the WHO is a world standard. I hope you're aware of this one. Okay, so yes, this is the next step of the water quality studies, that is the management. Okay, so if you know that there should be some issues in the water quality, if you want to deal with that, for example, you identify nearby water body is get affected, then you need to go with the management procedure, in the sense of how to sustain, how to do some kind of a management for to protect these water resources. Okay, and this slide will give you some guidelines. Okay, what are the steps for the management? And the first one, you need to identify the problem. Okay, as I mentioned that for the few slides I'm stressing on the agriculture impact. So if you really want to discuss on the agriculture impact, then you need to identify what is the exact issues of that particular agriculture water quality. Okay, and you can also identify indicate in the sense of, for example, particular parameters get very high, and that may be the one of the key factor for the quality, for example salinization or salinity. If you feel that salinity is so high, then you can think of that why the salinity is so high in the water. Okay, then the next step, you need to assess the sources, as I mentioned that. Okay, if you say there is a salinity, you need to identify where this salinity come from, where's the sources. Okay, whether it can discharge from the agriculture or discharge from the industry, or it discharge from the domestic sewages. Okay, and after you identify sources, then you could try to link the sources to the targets. For example, your pollutant is coming from the agriculture, then you need to see how this pollutant could end up in a particular domain. For example, it goes into the river or in the lake or in the groundwater. So you need to relate the sources and the targets. Okay. And you can also allocate some permissible loads. For example, you feel that the concentration is too high, then you need to put the benchmark. You need to put some kind of a the guidelines. Okay, this is the maximum limit. So you need to put some kind of allocation of the permissible loads. After that, you can do some monitoring. Okay, so monitoring the sense of you cannot do it in a one day. Okay, so you can do some kind of frequent observation of the water quality, maybe every day. If you want to do, you can do it, or maybe the monthly wise or seasonal wise, you can do the groundwater monitoring, and you can do some evaluate. Okay, and finally you can implement based upon this all the factors that you identified. Okay, so this side is a simple flow chart what I explained just now about this process. Okay. Okay, so this is the learning outcomes for this part one. Okay, I just pull out some of the key points that I discussed so far. So this point is essential for you, just take away with you. Okay, so the first one is the groundwater is essential for the irrigation. So that's what I'm stressing because there are different scenarios that every country facing the issues for the sources of water, and one of the ultimate solution for the water resource, the groundwater. Okay, so that's why most of the country is mainly depending on the groundwater for the irrigation purpose. And the second point is the agriculture impacts lead to the water pollution, and that's what I mentioned to you. One way, of course, agriculture is so important that will giving the socio-economic growth for the country. But if you see the other side of the scenario, it will affect the water quality. Okay, not only in the water quality, it will also giving the decline in the water quantity as well. So the last point is the water composition that suggests the irrigation water quality. Okay, so from that I just finish up the part one. So this is the end of the part one. Then I will see you in the second part regarding the methods. Okay, thank you.